The corridors of the royal palace had always been filled with tradition, protocol, and carefully measured decisions. Every word spoken within its walls carried weight. Every public appearance was planned months in advance. But on one quiet morning, a single decision made by Princess Leonor sent a ripple through the palace unlike anything anyone expected. King Felipe stood silently in his private office, staring out the window overlooking Madrid. The early sunlight stretched across the palace gardens, but his attention was fixed on the folder resting on his desk. Inside was a simple document. Princess Leonor's personal request. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rebellious. Yet somehow, it left the king more concerned than he had been in years. The request asked for greater independence in planning her future public responsibilities. Rather than relying entirely on palace advisors, Leonor wished to take a more active role in choosing the causes she would support, the communities she would visit, and the speeches she would personally write. To outsiders, it sounded perfectly reasonable. Inside the palace, however, everyone understood its deeper meaning. It marked the beginning of a new chapter. One where the future queen was preparing to lead with her own voice. Felipe slowly removed his glasses. His concern wasn't about losing authority. It was about protecting his daughter from pressures he understood better than anyone alive. He had once been in her position. He knew exactly how difficult it could become. As news quietly spread among senior palace officials, opinions quickly divided. Some advisors welcomed Leonor's growing confidence. Others worried she was moving too quickly. One senior official remarked privately, "She has remarkable judgment, but the world is waiting for even the smallest mistake." That sentence echoed through several meetings. Every appearance made by Leonor was now followed by endless media analysis. Every gesture became a headline. Every smile sparked speculation. Felipe knew that once greater independence began, there would be fewer opportunities to shield her from criticism. That thought weighed heavily on him. Later that afternoon, father and daughter met privately. There were no advisors, no cameras, no royal staff, just a father and his daughter sitting together over tea. Felipe gently asked, "Are you certain this is the right time?" Leonor smiled respectfully. "I've learned everything you've tried to teach me." She paused before continuing, "But eventually I have to learn by making my own decisions." The room fell quiet. Those words carried both gratitude and determination. Felipe looked at her for several moments. He recognized something familiar. Years earlier, he had spoken nearly identical words to his own father. History, it seemed, was repeating itself. Over the following weeks, Leonor quietly began preparing her first independently planned engagements. She spent evenings researching charities. She met with educators, environmental organizations, medical researchers, youth leaders. Rather than simply attending ceremonies, she wanted every visit to have genuine purpose. Palace staff noticed subtle changes. She asked more questions, requested fewer prepared notes, spent longer speaking with ordinary citizens during visits. Many people admired the change. Others feared it created unnecessary risks. Public expectations for the future queen continued growing. One advisor privately warned Felipe, "The more authentic she becomes, the harder it will be to control public expectations." Felipe understood exactly what he meant. Authenticity inspired trust, but it also invited constant scrutiny. Meanwhile, Queen Letizia quietly watched everything unfold. Unlike many advisors, she appeared less worried. One evening she joined Felipe in the palace library. Without saying much, she simply placed an old photograph on the table. It showed Felipe during his own early years as crown prince. Young, confident, determined. Letizia smiled softly. "You once asked for the same chance." Felipe laughed quietly. "I know, and my father probably worried just as much." For the first time in days, he relaxed. Still, concern never fully disappeared. The weeks that followed brought Leonor's first independently organized public address. The venue was modest. No grand palace. No elaborate ceremony. Instead, she chose a youth education conference attended by students from across Spain. Rather than reading every line from prepared government notes, she delivered much of the speech in her own words. She spoke about responsibility, listening, service, and earning public trust every single day. The audience responded warmly. Many young people felt they were hearing not just a future queen, but someone their own age who understood modern challenges. The speech quickly spread online. Commentators praised its sincerity. Others debated whether the royal family was entering a completely new era. Inside the palace, advisors carefully monitored every reaction. Some celebrated, others remained cautious. Felipe read every report, every headline, every analysis. Late one evening, Leonor quietly entered his office. She found him reviewing newspaper clippings. She smiled. "I knew you'd still be working." Felipe looked up. "I wanted to understand how today was received." She sat across from him. "Did I make mistakes?" He closed the folder. "Everyone makes mistakes." She waited. He continued. "The important question is whether you stayed true to your principles." Leonor nodded. "I tried." Felipe smiled warmly. Then today was successful. For a moment, they weren't king and princess. They were simply father and daughter, sharing a conversation built on trust. Months passed. Leonor continued taking greater responsibility. Each appearance reflected careful preparation. Each speech showed increasing confidence. The palace gradually adjusted to her growing independence. Even those who had initially opposed the changes admitted she was handling the responsibility with remarkable maturity. Still, Felipe never completely stopped worrying. Not because he doubted her. Because he understood the weight she carried. He knew the loneliness leadership could bring. He knew every difficult decision would eventually belong to her. He wished he could protect her forever. But he also knew that protecting someone sometimes meant allowing them to grow. One evening, standing together on a palace balcony overlooking the city lights, Felipe quietly spoke. "When you were little, I thought my job was keeping you safe." Leonor listened carefully. "Now I realize my job is preparing you to stand without me." Neither spoke for several seconds. The silence said everything. Leonor gently replied, "You've done that better than you think." Felipe smiled. Pride replaced worry. Not completely. Perhaps it never would. But enough to understand that the future no longer depended on how tightly he held on. It depended on how confidently she could move forward. The royal decision that had once left Felipe deeply worried ultimately revealed something even more powerful. Leadership is never inherited simply through titles. It is earned through courage, through preparation, through humility, and through the willingness to accept responsibility when the moment finally arrives. For Felipe, the hardest lesson wasn't learning to lead. It was learning when to let the next generation begin leading too. As the palace lights faded into the night, one truth became impossible to ignore. The future queen was no longer waiting for history. She was quietly beginning to write it. The end.